I'm going to talk to you today about predicting the future. But I'm going to start by going into the past. Growing up, I was, weird. At least that's what I told myself. While my friends were playing Atari video games or in backyards playing flag football, I was starting businesses, trying to make money. Magic shows in my driveway, charging admission, trying to convince the Milton Bradley Company to buy the board game that I had invented. It's called Suspicions, and I had to make sure that I had the copyright, that nobody could steal that name. So this is my first copyright when I was 12 years old. My mother inspired my creativity. We had a dictionary at our dinner table. She was a school teacher, and what she believed is that if you didn't understand the word, you should look it up. So we had a big dictionary with the little letters on the tabs. I think she really was most happy with me when I used my imagination. Like when I was 6, I had an idea for my first business, a greeting card company. So it was my mom who went out and got the raw materials, felt tip pens and construction paper. And it was my mom who drove me around suburban Detroit to try to convince stores to sell my cards to their customers. So I suppose she would be my first chief logistics officer of all these businesses. My dad inspired me with examples of hard work and grit. He was the first person in his family ever to go to graduate school, Harvard Law School, no less. He started his own law firm, and it grew. And I remember sitting in the back seat of his Buick Riviera. Sometimes we'd drive by a small factory or storefront, and he would say with such pride that that was his client. I think down deep, even back then, he wanted me to work at his law firm, maybe take it over someday. But something about seeing him in that activity, it didn't really hit me, didn't really feel right. I saw him giving advice to people and on the phone, helping them think through problems. I wanted to be the one receiving the advice. And I also saw him in a suit and tie. Sometimes he'd go to get a manicure at the barbershop. That didn't feel right either. No, that life just didn't feel right for me. When I arrived at the University of Michigan on my first day, I opened the course guide. Back then, there was no online courses. It was an actual book. And what I remember is looking at all of the different choices. And what I felt like is that it was saying, pick one of this, and one of this, and one of this, and one of this. And when you're done with that, pick one of these handful of paths that we've created for you. Something didn't feel right about that either. None of the paths felt right, except I found one class that did. It was a class called entrepreneurship. There's only one problem about it. It was only offered to graduate students. And so began my first negotiation at the University of Michigan. Persistence over and over on the phone at the office hours, trying to convince this professor to let me be a freshman undergrad in a graduate level entrepreneurship class. And it worked. He let me in. Now, this entrepreneurship class had lots of guest lectures. That's one of the great things about it. But most of them were wearing a coat and tie, and they seemed stuffy, scripted. until one day a man walked in with a pair of jeans and wearing a colorful sweater. He spoke from the heart. He swore a lot. And he talked about the passion of entrepreneurship. He talked about risk and reward. He talked about failure. And he talked about navigating your way to success. I felt like he was talking to me. His name was Sam Zell, one of the great entrepreneurs of our time. And so when Sam finished speaking that day, I think it must have been with a ton of energy, I went right to the front and I introduced myself to him. And it must have made an impression because 3-4 days later, I got a call. And the call was summoning me to come to Chicago and meet with Sam, which I did. I got myself there, and I'll never forget sitting on his couch, he looking me right in the eye. What Sam said to me was about me. It was about taking risk. It was about failure being a part of the journey. And I remember he said, if you feel weird, it might be because you're an entrepreneur. It's 30 years later now, 30 years later, and Sam has been a mentor and a friend for 30 years to me. I spent the next 4 years through my undergrad experience at the University of Michigan starting businesses, lots of them. And during that time, both Sam and my dad were adamant about the value of a legal education. I think they convinced me that the education was valuable, but I still didn't feel like being a lawyer was something I would ever want to do. I remember imagining myself as a lawyer. Here's what it looked like. I was walking down a blank, empty hall, and then I would turn right into an empty office over and over and over every day until my death. It didn't feel right. And then I thought about the passion that I felt when I was young with these small businesses, but how exciting it was to create. That's what felt right. And so back at that kitchen table, the one with the dictionary by it, I sat down with my parents. I think my dad still had some hope that I might go to law school and get the religion. But I sat down and I said, looking them both right in the eye, I said, I'm going to go to Michigan Law School. I agree, it's an amazing educational opportunity, but I absolutely am not going to practice law. And everything about that felt right. My full body senses said, yes. So 3 years later, in 1993, at the graduation of Michigan Law School, there were 500 graduates. 500 people graduating, and out of 500, two of us were not going into law. My business partner to this day, Eric Lefkowski, and me. 2 out of 500 did not go into the law. Off we went. Our journey was about building businesses. Our first was in this middle of Wisconsin, a town less than 3,000 people. We lived out of a Holiday Inn hotel room with 2 twin beds for way too long. Those were days with lots of driving, long drives for short meetings, where constantly we were being judged negatively because of our young age and lack of experience. Those were days of traveling the world, but the travels did not leave me on a beach. They left me looking at factories, in meeting rooms with no windows for long times, Now, we soon moved our offices down to Chicago, but the grind was long, and the grind was hard. And then after 6 years, there was a win. A big win. A win that made me feel like it was all worth it. A public company came and approached us, and they bought our company for $240 million. That's what I thought. It felt like it was all worth it. I got a statement from Morgan Stanley that said that I was worth $60 million. I had stock worth $60 million, 29 years old. Until a year later, when the public company went bankrupt. And that same statement from Morgan Stanley told me I was worth nothing. It's even worse. During those 6 years, those 6 hard years, we signed personally on a business loan. So now I was worth less than zero. I cried. I cried a lot. I felt failure. And it was even a deeper feeling because I had just gotten married 3 years earlier. My wife of 3 years, seeing me without this validating statement about the fruits of my labor. And I had 2 young daughters, ages 1 and 2. And so my feeling was, now what? It's in moments like that that you get a sense of the person that you really married. And in that moment, what Kim did not dwell on is fear or a sense of failure. What she said to me was a few words that made all the difference. She said, "We're going to be okay." And what I said to myself is, it's not about what happened, it's about what's next. But what's next became a search for a feeling. The same feeling that I had when I so clearly explained to my parents that my path was not going to be that of a lawyer, but instead that of an entrepreneur. I decided I wanted to find that feeling. Most people at that moment, I suppose, would search for the right headline or the right, maybe how many eyeballs can I attract with a certain business? Search outside. Well, as cliche as it might sound, my search became one on the inside. I went to yoga retreats. I started journaling. I went to India twice. I even tried a sweat lodge. I learned meditation. And I thought at first that meditation was about looking out, checking out. What I realized that meditation was about checking in. Meditation for me created this zone of quiet, a zone of quiet that allowed me to understand and listen to my senses. A powerful feeling. Now, I'm not here to tell you that a sweat lodge is the way to predict the future. What I am here to do is talk about that there's real science in the proposition I'm making. Here's what it is. Repeated studies using MRIs of our brains show that the brain activity related to thoughts and ideas is active well before we actually have ideas and thoughts in our consciousness. In other words, we have lots of ideas and thoughts that never reach our consciousness. I believe those thoughts find their way to our intuition. I call it to my gut. Now, I've got a problem with the way society deals with that reality, because I don't think it really does it that well. Our educational institutions fundamentally are talking about listening and regurgitating. They tell us, and we're supposed to repeat back. What we're not asked to do is to access and listen to our intuition. And our workplaces too often are about do this and don't think about it. Just keep doing it. We're not even asked about how we feel, what we sense. I have an enormous amount of respect for Albert Einstein, which is why I think I'm so touched by a quote, an Einstein quote, where he says, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind a faithful servant. But we've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift." After that dark period of my life, I committed to honor my gift. I committed to only do what felt right. And that commitment has made all the difference. The journey that I've been on has been quite joyful. Perhaps a better statement would be quite remarkable. Eric and I have started 14 companies. I've rung the bell on the NASDAQ stock exchange twice. And today the companies that we've created employ over 15,000 people around the world. Now, sometimes I'll get asked the question, how do you know that this company that you're starting is going to work? How do you predict the future? How do you see it? My answer is quite simple. I do not see it. But I do think that I have a feeling for it. A feeling. I have a sense of it. Now, building companies is hard work. It's risky business. The odds of success when you create an enterprise are low. But I believe that listening to my intuition, quieting the zone around me, has been a key to this journey. So let me take you back again to Detroit. In the back seat of that same Buick Riviera of my dad's, with my dad in front and I'm in the back seat. We would drive downtown to Detroit and I'd be twisting my neck looking at these incredible factories, these buildings. They were mystical, they were formidable, they were powerful and mighty. At least that's what I thought. In the last 10 years, I think we all realize that they're not all so mighty, that some of these companies have lost their way. In Detroit, that also causes a loss of people. Population shrinks, and it's not just Detroit, it's cities all over the world. When I saw this in Detroit, it made me sad, but it also gave me some anger. Anger because I deeply believe that major industries need to be vibrant and alive. They are the source of so much opportunity. And as an entrepreneur, I believe in the power of technology and innovation and the power of data. Here's what I know. I know that sensors are covering all types of machines and buildings and activity in our world now. I know that the cloud, the computing cloud is capable of storing enormous amounts of data, and it's getting even better. I know that data science is undergoing a revolution. And I know that technology continues to get better, more flexible, and more accessible. But the companies whose factories are now empty did not leverage this opportunity that comes out of their data. They lost their edge. As a leader, I know perhaps why. I've seen the world of a leader where you're inundated with consultants, advisors, PowerPoint decks, everything but the solution. I've seen technology companies, enterprise technology companies, who show you what might work, but it requires you to change your company to fit their one-size-fits-all platform. I started to develop a sense. The sense I developed was that all of these inputs, all of the opportunity that comes from sensors and data, that all of it perhaps was the beginning of the future of business. Maybe companies could predict their future and therefore make the right decisions and continue to get better. Now, to a hammer, I suppose everything looks like a nail. And I've been told that, to me, every problem, intuitively, I feel like the answer is creating a solution. Creating a solution. And so something about that recent trip in the last 10 years to Detroit stuck in my head, and it began this series of observations. And what I did ultimately is start a company. The company is called Uptake. Started it about 3 years ago. And Uptake is now one of the fastest growing companies ever. 33 months, we're at 800 people. Let me tell you what we do. Our software platform takes in data from sensors and produces insight, actionable insight. Our insight allows companies to make decisions that make them more productive, more reliable, safer, and give them better cybersecurity. It's sort of a fancy way of saying that we help companies get better. We help them predict their future, predict what to do next. So what does that look like in real life? Planes, using our technology, can more reliably take off on time with the right parts. And in construction and mining, equipment can work better and be more productive. When trains go across the country, they won't break down in the desert, and wind turbines can get the last ounce of energy possible with every turn. And across entire businesses, the cybersecurity of things is something we help with. I'm from the Midwest. I know industry. People talk about moonshots. I know it's one of the themes here this week. In the year of my birth, in 1969, the moonshot happened. America put a man on the moon. The lesser told story is that it was the creativity and innovation of our major industries that helped us do it. I believe that the next moonshot is right here on Earth. I know that there's a revolution happening right now. It's a revolution in technology. It's a revolution that is making data from sensors available at remarkable rates. It's helping us predict the future, to make the right decisions, to be the best we can be in business, safer, more productive, more reliable, and more secure. So I would offer two challenges. The first challenge is to businesses, large businesses, small businesses, and industries. And the challenge is this: listen to the sensors and the senses that are available to you. Quiet all of the noise that comes from consultants and advisors, enterprise software companies, all the people that are asking you to do what they say, but don't help you actually do it. And take advantage of this ability to predict the future and know that you can evolve optimally. And then we come back to all of us. My challenge, to listen to your senses, to quiet the noise that might be surrounding you, and to realize that your moonshot, the prediction of your best future, is right in front of you right now. Thank you.